over thousands of years of human life on Earth, there have been many revolutions that forever changed the way human cultures have evolved. The agricultural revolution, approximately 12,000 years ago, was the evolution from hunting and gathering to planting crops and domesticating animals. This enabled the development of civilizations. From this point forward, agriculture would forever become an essential industry to human survival on Earth. The Industrial Revolution started about 250 years ago. The creation of steam and internal combustion engines reduced the reliance on human and animal muscle for food production. It transformed many aspects of society and enabled the growth of increasingly large cities all over the globe. The technological revolution of the 21st century that we are currently living through is the integration and convergence of all the digital and technological innovations that have happened since the creation of the internet with the mechanical and industrial advancements of the Industrial Revolution. The internet was invented in 1983, went public in 1991, and began to enter general use in 1993. For the last 40 years, agriculture, industry, and new technologies have been evolving in a state of symbiosis, leading to new developments at an astronomical rate. The result is a global industry of highly specialized professionals filling jobs that didn't exist 40 years ago, and a new generation of farmers whose skills are essential to human survival on the planet. In this documentary, we dive into the evolution of agriculture in Western Canada over the last 100 years, specifically large-scale, broad-acre grain farming. We'll take a close look at the past, present, and future of agriculture to see what form farmers, agricultural academic researchers, and industry experts think the farms of the future will take. And indeed, in some ways, are already taking.
My name is Ike Adogu. I'm the manager of Crops and Environmental Stewardship at Olds College Center for Innovation. I did my bachelor's in Nigeria, and I have a master's of science in agricultural engineering from the University of Alberta. And I have also worked for about 25 years with the Provincial Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. Agricultural engineering is basically the application of engineering, science, and art, but primarily focused on agricultural production. And it dates back to maybe the 1930s or 40s. So you'd have the civil engineers, mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, electrical engineers, taking their engineering learning and applying it to agriculture. There's things that we look at when it comes to environmental stewardship. There are things like soil conservation. This dates back to the 1930s, during the Dust Bowl and all, where folk were starting to lose a lot of their soil because of the strong winds, the dry conditions.
My name is Steve Larocque, and I have a company called Beyond Agronomy. So I operate out of Three Hills, Alberta, and I do work with Olds College as their consulting agronomist. And my background is actually a diploma at Olds College in crop advisory. And then I moved on to the University of Lethbridge and got a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture there. Some of the main challenges that we've been able to address as agronomists and agronomy, we've been able to make the switch from tillage-based systems to conservation agriculture. So the dirty 30s were devastating because we had all these open fields, 50-50 summer fallow, 50% of the land was left fallow, 50% was cropped, heavy cultivation on the fallow year, and that land was subject to blow, and it did. It changed the landscape in North America forever. So the soil on the hilltops and knolls, they blew off into the ditches, into the to the low areas. So you have topsoil that's 5 feet deep and then nothing on the knolls. So they knew right away that that wasn't sustainable.
Hi, my name is Robert Syke, and I'm an agrologist, which means I'm an agricultural science kind of guy. My background is plant physiology, soil chemistry, and crop nutrition. I built many companies, right from farming all the way through ag retail, right to remote sensing and robotic companies. And currently, I'm building a company called AgVisor Pro, which is the connection of people to people in an ecosystem, and also Visor Pro, which is leveraging artificial intelligence in a large language generative model. Every time you till the soil, whether it's with a cultivator or a disc, you fracture the soil, and so it does a number of really detrimental things. The fracturing of the soil breaks apart organic matter, and that releases nitrogen in the soil, but that nitrogen comes at the cost of you reducing the organic matter. Every time you see somebody going over the soil, fracturing the soil, they're breaking down the organic matter, they're reducing the structure of the soil, so there's less water holding capacity and permeability. They're blasting off greenhouse gases because methane is being released from the soil and carbon dioxide from the organic matter, and of course nitrous oxide is being released as you cultivate the soils. Today, we don't do that. We soil test, we use fertilizers, and we use a lot of tools to make sure that we don't fracture the land. And that's really one of the big changes. And so that's a scientific explanation to a short question, but that's really the nature of agriculture is extremely scientific.
So what they were looking at from the 70s onward, or even late 60s, they were looking at soil conservation. They knew it wasn't sustainable to continue mechanized, continuous cultivation. And that was where they introduced no-till, or conservation agriculture.
I'm Jeff Carlson from a farm between Trochu and Olds, Alberta. I graduated from University of Calgary and with a Bachelor of Commerce and also University of Calgary with a Bachelor of Laws. Growing up on the farm, I worked always on the farm, but I full-time started farming in about 1992, straight out of my commerce background. During that era, people started to look at reduced tillage and trying to look at, land as a living organism. I guess started to really add to our definition of sustainability, our definition of being responsible stewards.
At the time, there were things like shelter belts, technologies as simple as planting trees to try and help mitigate the loss of soil and be able to conserve the soil, which is required for soil production. It's a simple technology. There isn't any mechanical or chemical use here.
I manage some fields that have been in no-till for just over 40 years. So over 40 years they've been conservation agriculture, and the soil quality, the friability, the smell, those soils are absolutely beautiful because all the biology was starting to live again. And our soil organic carbon levels have just slowly, because it's a slow climb, we're in a drier environment, so it's a slow climb, but over the decades, we've increased our soil organic matter by 1% per decade. And if you look at where we started at 2, 2.5, 1.5 after cultivation, we're now up to 5, 6, 7%. And that helps, that's a great environment for soil biology to thrive, better water infiltration. So when we actually do get an inch of rain, it goes in the soil and stays there.
No-till farming, primarily birthed in Western Canada and Australia back in the 70s and 80s, is becoming more adopted throughout the world. We were one of the first ones in our area to adopt that. That was kind of back when I was just new and fresh. Right away, we were able to do more acres with their existing machinery because we weren't going over a piece of land 3 or 4 times in the spring. We were only doing it once. So you needed less tractors, less equipment, less fuel, less manpower, all those sort of things. Your erosion stopped because the stubble that was left standing caught snow in the winter, so you had more moisture. The stubble also kept the wind and the water from eroding the soil away, so your soil was more anchored. So we saw our yields increase dramatically. And right now I'd say in Western Canada probably 80% of the people practice it.
It all changed through the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, and really took off into the 90s once the early adopters kind of started to figure it out. And what it changed was our nutrient use efficiency, our water use efficiency. It changed the crops we grow. We changed yield and quality. We made huge steps. We saved on labor because we weren't out tilling the soil. So there was massive changes in that 70s, 80s, 90s that agronomists helped to transition. So when you stop cultivating and destroying their environment and destroying them, they're able to flourish. So it's a really great story where conservation agriculture really elevated where we could take crop production.
You have a certain practice you do where soil microbes are being killed or destroyed. At the end of the day, the implication is that it will impact your crop production, for example, and that you will not be able to continue your particular production practice, or your input costs will go up in order for you to reclaim or repair what was damaged. So it's imperative for them to ensure that they are good stewards of the land.
Most farms in North America, 97% of farms today are still family operated. They may be incorporated. Some of the corporate farming is really in the area of chickens and hogs, but when you consider grain farming, not too many corporations want to take on the risk of grain farming. So that is still held, majority of it, vast, like 97, 98%, is still held in family hands. And that's the case today.
I am Joy Agnew. I am the VP of Research here at Olds College of Agriculture and Technology. I am an agricultural engineer by training, but my entire career has been focused on applied agricultural research. So at Olds College, I oversee our applied research division as well as our smart farm operations and the integration of that smart farm to accelerate the development and adoption of best practices in agriculture. Environmental stewardship within agriculture is obviously it's a critical foundation for growing food. So it relates to our ability, or this generation's ability, to meet our demands for food without jeopardizing future generations' ability to meet their demands. So that means managing land, managing soil, managing water resources appropriately to maximize our productivity without having a detrimental impact on future land use. So environmental stewardship encompasses that overall philosophy in a way that can maximize productivity without having a long-term negative impact.
So my name is Herman Simons. I'm the manager for the Smart Ag Applied Research here at Olds College. Been here with the college here now for about 3 years, where we've been doing applied research in the area of smart ag technology. My background is born and raised in Holland, been in farming activities for pretty much my whole life, born and raised on the farm. Environmental stewardship is very important for agriculture. By definition, agriculture is working with nature. It's working off the land, with animals. The environmental stewardship is essential as a lifeline for agriculture. If we don't look after the environment, we will not be farming in due time. You cannot see farming to be successful if we're not looking after the land and if we're not looking after the animals. By definition, they are intrinsically connected.
Environmental stewardship and agriculture are intertwined. They've never been separate. Something that is, I think, very important to mention here is agriculture cannot survive without being environmentally sustainable. The agricultural sector is the best steward of the environment because they have no choice.
Stewardship is one of our principles of our company and of our family, we realized that we are only on this land for a period during our life, but the land actually extends before and beyond. And so when you start thinking long-term, you make decisions that are beneficial long-term for the land. So being a good steward, to me, is being a long-term steward, improving the land so that it's better for the next generation than what you got it at. Some of the practices of previous generations, you know, they didn't know any differently. They didn't have access to the information, to the different fertilizer things we have now, stuff like that. So, you know, they were doing their best with the information that they had. And so we just continue to, you know, improve and build on that.
My name is Joshua Carlson. I'm 24 years old and I became a full-time farmer about 7 years ago. So stewardship is very important to us. Our farm is 120 years old and we look to constantly be improving it. And it was only 120 years old because our previous generations took care of it. The land and the sustainability is very important. We can't continue to keep growing if we don't take it into account. So a lot of these practices maintain efficiency and long-term longevity because you're not over-applying fertilizer. You're using the correct amount of fertilizer based on the area and based on the soil requirements.
Yeah, my name is Carter Carlson and I've been a full-time equipment operator for the last 3 years and I am 21 years old. As a farmer, really a huge goal of ours is to steward the land. Your land is your livelihood and you're doing the best you can to protect your crops, to protect the land, and to really make sure that the nutrients in your soil are supplicated for the amount of growth that you're really doing on the land. Our farm is 120 years old and the way we stewarded the land is the way we're able to grow what we grow now, and it will be the same way into the future.
If a certain production practice that they engaged in is having a negative impact on the environment, the bottom line is that they will not be in business for as long as maybe they might have originally intended.
Stewardship is about adoption of practices and technologies to enhance sustainability, or at least that's how I define it. So stewardship is about making decisions and adopting philosophies that lead towards more enhanced sustainability. The interesting thing about environmental stewardship or environmental sustainability in ag is that it's embedded within decision-making within the farm because their livelihood depends on the ability of that soil and those resources to continue to be productive for their own family as well as their future family that's likely to inherit that farm.
Agriculture is one of the few industries that's predicated upon intergenerational transfer. And so when you think about it, why would any farmer be excited or motivated to destroy their most important asset, which is the soil on which they make a living for their family and the future generations to come?
So it's not a question of whether or not farmers can or should be environmental stewards. They are, and they are already incredible stewards. They just need to be supported in that and need to always be aware of the new technologies and new practices that might be available to them to increase their overall stewardship.
It's spring 2024, and farmers across Canada are mobilizing to get their fields seeded. Approximately 25 million acres of wheat, 21 million acres of canola, 7 million acres of barley, 4 million acres of corn, and 19 million acres of various other crops like soybeans, oats, flax, and peas will be put into the ground in a very short window for a total seeded area of about 76 million acres. The prairie provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba account for 90% of Canadian wheat production annually. Canada ranked 4th in the world for wheat production in 2021 and exported $8.3 billion of wheat, with the main destinations being China, Japan, Indonesia, Peru, Colombia, and the United States. Rainfall is obviously a major factor in crop production. Canadian wheat production was 21.7 million tons in 2021. And due to the low rainfall of 2022, global exports of Canadian wheat dropped by 10 million tons. The commodity market, however, is influenced by many different factors. And despite the 10 million ton drop, the revenue generated by wheat exports increased from 8.3 billion in 2021 to 9.3 billion in 2022. With reference to canola, Canada has the lion's share of the global market. Its exports of more than 3 million tons a year account for 80% of global production. By comparison, Canada's closest competitor, the European Union, exports just over 300,000 tons of canola per year. The main sources of demand for Canadian canola are Japan, Mexico, and the United States. It's a busy season for farmers. They have to wait for the right soil temperature before seeding. Then, get their seed in the ground as efficiently and quickly as possible to maximize their growth season. Seed too early, when the soil's too cold, and your crop won't germinate. Seed too late, and your crop won't have the growth season necessary to reach its maximum genetic yield. When farmers can start seeding is highly variable on location and weather conditions. But, on average, by mid-June, 97% of seeding is completed in Canada.
Yeah, so my name's Wade McAllister. I'm from Central Alberta, and we're seeding canola today out by the Red Deer Airport. The name of the farm is Antler Valley Farm. It's a 5th generation grain farm, established in 1890 by my great-great-grandpa. Currently farm full-time with my brother. And the technology running today is just your basic GPS to run the tractor in a straight line. And then the drill that we're pulling, it's 60 feet wide, it's 15-inch spacing, it's got a 730 bushel tank. It's all one unit, and it's running off of a Viper monitor with full sectional control, turn compensation, scales on the tanks.
Hi, my name is Joshua Carlson. We're here with Carlson Egg, and here we're seeding canola.
Yeah, so the sectional control, it works off a map. Back there we've got 4 meters, so each meter is a section. So we've got 4 15-foot sections. Here is our 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. And so if we're coming into a headland or if we're going across an area that we've already seeded, it will set the sections off so we're not overlapping.
We have our tractor screen here, so this shows our coverage map, all of our A/B lines and guidance system. And then here we have our front cart and our rear cart for all of our JD stuff.
Our old drill we averaged about 12% overlap. And with the wider drill now, we're down to 5% overlap. So the biggest thing is input costs are huge. So when you're cutting down, 7%, that's quite a bit of money that you're saving. Yeah, well, the biggest thing with the fertilizer and the general public thinking that we're over applying and we're hurting our soils or our rivers or anything, fertilizer is very expensive. And the last thing that we want to do is over apply. And if anything, on our farm in the last, I would say 5 years, is actually we're cutting back on our fertilizer because our soil health is growing every year because of the way we farm. We're a zero-till operation, as you can see out here. The last thing that was in this field was a combine, and we're pulling in and we're direct seeding into the soil, which builds organic matter and soil health and all the microorganisms. We're actually dropping our nitrogen rates just because of our soil health. So yeah, like you're talking $1,000 a ton for nitrogen. The last thing that we want to do is put more on than we have to.
Yeah, so the brown is all area that we haven't covered, and green is our coverage map. And so as you can zoom out, you can see how much of the field we've done and how much is left to be completed.
This is like our logbook for everything that we do on the farm, whether we're changing fertilizer rates, changing seeding rates, planting time, different varieties, all that kind of thing. And then this monitor here is our are the brains of the drill. So this is how we change everything that we're doing back there. So as you can see here, this is us going down the field. So this one here is calculating how many acres we have left in this field, what we're applying for fertilizer, our fertilizer rate, and then our seeding rate, and then the variety that we're using.
So for our prescriptions, every year we'll do soil sampling at the end of harvest. So we'll go across each field and take a number of probe samples of the soil, mix it up, and we get it sent off to a lab. And in return, they'll send us back these prescriptions that will basically tell us how much fertilizer we want to apply in certain areas to make it optimal yield, but you don't want to be over applying fertilizer either.
The purpose of the prescriptions is to put the fertilizer down at the right rate in the right area so that we're not over fertilizing and so that we can avoid waste and give the crops the nutrients that they need.
If you did want to take an image from a satellite image or whatever, you would actually put it into this monitor, and it would automatically change your rates and for different soil types throughout the field. But for our farm, I find there's not a lot of variation in our soil, so we don't feel the benefit of running a subscription. So as soon as this line turns red, you can activate the auto steer, and that's going to allow the tractor to drive in an absolute perfectly straight line until the end of the field. So now it's hands-free, like it's driving itself down the field, and it's just keeping those perfect lines across the whole field so we're not overlapping or missing, which cuts down on the same thing, our input costs and everything like that. Yeah, since GPS came in, it's changed farming. It's allowed us to do a better job on the job that we're doing, be more efficient, less hours, less fuel, less man hours. Everything we run now has GPS. And even this drill is on a subscription. So actually every year we are running within 1.5 inches pass to pass. So I'm seeding now, and next year I can nudge the GPS over 7.5 inches and I can actually seed in between the rows the following year. So last pass of the night, just doing a big teardrop turn here. Just to not skid the wheel, not hit the trees on the headlands. And we're good. So now we're lining back up. We got the red line. GPS is activated, tractor's driving itself. Once the drill's straight, turn the drill on, and everything else is automatic. Here I just dropped the rate here to 3 pounds an acre just for a trial, just one pass, so you can see the red, how it's mapping a different color because we're down at that 3 pounds. So it's just going to be interesting to watch it throughout the year and see what it does. I mean, you never know until you try stuff like that. That's it.
We have a number of different kind of guiding statements here at Olds College of Agriculture and Technology. So our social purpose is to transform agriculture for a better world. One of the focuses of the Smart Farm specifically is to address the global grand challenge of feeding a growing population with less negative environmental impact. And our overall mandate for our Applied Research Division is to accelerate the development and adoption of best practices and technologies to improve the productivity, sustainability, and profitability of food production.
There's a lot of talk around the grand challenge. I use the term sustainable intensification and infinite sustainability. All of those things are real. And as we stare into the future, we have to realize that agriculture must meet the needs of the future populations. But when you consider the global situation, there are about 6 or 7 countries in the world that actually produce more food than they consume. In Australia, Canada, Argentina, Brazil, there's not many. And so when you consider the ebb and flow of food around the planet, you know, how many weeks of wheat do we have globally in storage? Well, you know, we'd like to have 4 to 6 weeks or maybe a couple months of wheat in storage on the planet, but that stocks use ratio is dangerously low right now. And you slap on top of it the geopolitical issues of Russia, Ukraine, you slap on top of it the supply line issues that COVID brought on, and you've got some real concerns. And so I argue that, you know, so long as we have human beings on the planet, agriculture needs to be infinitely sustainable. And the countries that have the capability to produce more are being asked to punch above their belt. And Canada is one of those countries. So the last thing we need to do is to have policies that handcuff our farmers. We need to be encouraging our farmers to adopt technology, to let them stretch, because this stretching allows us to produce the food. The world needs more, not less Canada right now.
If you look at the way we are being pressured from society, basically with development, like housing development and urbanization, so we're losing some of the best farmland in the world every year just because it's being paved over. You don't have to go far outside of a city and you see mountains of soil. The best soil in the world is piled up like a waste product, and then they find a home somewhere for it that won't produce food anymore. In agriculture, we're being pushed out of the really productive areas. It means we're being pushed out to the marginal areas, which means we have to work even harder to figure out how we produce more on soil that's of lesser quality.
So as we consider sustainable intensification, where we actually looking at the relationship between urban sprawl and the capability of agriculture to maintain its production or maintain its capability to feed the world, is going to have a continual impact on how we do things and where we go.
Now the question would be, are our current practices sustainable? And in the book I've written on agriculture, I talk about infinite sustainability. Now, when you look at that, the soil is a thin epidermis that goes around the earth and provides sustenance for the entire population of the planet. So how do we best make use of that thin little layer of soil that's going to sustain us all? And how do we make sure that that soil lasts into the future and in fact gets better going forward?
The world owes its existence to the 6-inch layer of soil beneath us, because that's where we get our food. That's where it all starts. So we have a vested interest to make sure that we leave things better off than when we found them. So over time, we're looking at improving our productivity. We're always looking to improve that, but we need to do it on a similar land base. Farmland is finite. In fact, it's disappearing.
We are going to have a continued growth in our population and less land base available for food production.
So it's a double sword. It's a sword that cuts from two ends. Like we lose the best land, but we lose land, right? Over and above. And at the same token, we have more people to feed. So we need to do things differently.
And the only way we're going to do that is by sharing information and really having the tools behind us to start tackling problems that we couldn't before. So we have to manage our inputs accordingly, and then we're looking for optimizing yield and quality given the rainfall that we get, given the finite resource that's below our feet. There's technologies out there that improve drought resistance, that improve insect resistance, so you're not relying on pesticides anymore. The plant's doing the work for you.
It's a huge concern, right? Because that reduced land base traditionally is the best land that actually we've been farming on, because traditionally people have located at the areas where there's the best opportunity for a future, and that was in the past highly related with good lands.
So the risk profile of farming has changed and has gotten higher because everything gets more expensive. but it doesn't fundamentally change the fact that we rely on Mother Nature. We rely on rainfall. So when we have tough years or a bad year, there's more at risk than there was 30 years ago. We have found that the adoption of zero-till has reduced the risks. The droughts are not as bad anymore.
I don't think we can do without broadacre agriculture. I can't see us maintaining our level of food security without the current farming practices and the improvement on the current farming practices.
So we have to find ways to continually improve on the land base that we do have and make sure that it's left for future generations to continue.
Spray and fertilizer application is a controversial issue in agriculture. Changes in spray application over the last 50 years have been progressive, with the driving principles being the development of less invasive products and decreasing the rate of application as low as possible. The environmental impact quotient is a method of measuring the environmental impact of a certain product when applied to crops. Agriculture has been continually seeking to develop products with a lower environmental impact quotient and continually reducing application rates. In the 1960s and 70s, they measured application rates in pounds per acre. Today, application rates are measured in grams per acre. With reference to products applied to just canola, between 1996 and 2016, the environmental impact quotient has improved 30%.
My name's Scott McAllister. Farm with my brother and my dad, Antler Valley Farm, 5th generation farm in central Alberta. So today is June 7th, 2023, and we're out here spraying a quarter of wheat. We're spraying it with a herbicide for weed control. And what I'm spraying with is a front mount front boom sprayer. So the boom width is 120 feet and the tank size is 1,600 gallons. I can do about, on average about 14 mile an hour if the field is smooth, so we can get a full quarter section done in about an hour. So a full quarter is about 160 acres, give or take the trees and the obstacles, and then we got a nurse truck that follows us around, and I'll fill on the side of the road and go to the next field.
Hi, I'm Jim Leslie. I'm working with Scott here today, and I'm helping Scott fill. Over here we have the monitor to tell us how many gallons we're putting in for a fill. This is a monitor keeping track of volume. If you wanted to do a full fill, part fill, on how many gallons you want to put into your tank. I can let Scott know when to shut it off. He tells me how many gallons he would like, and we can shut it off at exactly what we want.
Hello, it's Carter Carlson from Carlson Agriculture. It is June 12th, 2023, and we are spraying some barley. Yeah, today we are operating a high clearance sprayer, which has GPS guidance. It has all the sensors for the booms, so that's at the right height and the height that you want to set at. We also have sectional control, which means that as we go over different places of the field that have already been sprayed, it will automatically turn off those sections so that there's not overlap or any excessive spray. We have a technology called the Boom Track Pro. This is sensors that are spread out all across the booms of the sprayer to allow adjustment as you're going across the field to reach a target height. The target height that you set is important to make sure that the spray is being applied evenly for a proper, even application with minimal drift due to wind.
Technology on it today is quite advanced. So just as I grab a line here, this is my GPS page. You see these lines on here are what keeps us going straight. And the next one I want is this red one. And it's showing me how far away we are. So as we get close to that line, I'm gonna grab the button. So now the machine and the hydraulics using GPS is now taken over, and it will hold that line within an inch, and it'll keep us spraying true north.
Each part of the boom is split into different segments, and those segments will turn on and off the nozzles as it is going over places that have been applied already. So this technology is really to be used so that you're not over applying and you're not spraying twice as much as you need to with overlapping in different areas. And it should happen right about now. And then we're turning around and it's going to turn on again because we're going to start going over an area that has not been sprayed right about now. So this also allows us to minimize the amount of fuel usage as we can properly spray fields in the most efficient way that we can, and that is very good for the environment and very good for us as farmers as well.
So that's the GPS side of things. I'm hands-free now, we're driving, or the sprayer's driving, because we're not actually putting a lot of chemical per acre on it. 10 gallons an acre. On that same acre, we're only getting 330 milliliters of product. So we got to keep that all in a constant mixture. And we're going straight here with it. I'll grab the button. And now the GPS is taken over. The chemical realizes that it needs to spray, and everything happens on its own that way. So everything is as accurate as possible using GPS and using this technology in the sprayer. 40 years ago, with a pull type sprayer, it was just one on-off switch, one valve, the whole thing was spraying. So if he had to spray a 10-foot strip down the field, his whole 60-foot sprayer had to be on. So now when I go down that 10-foot strip, I'm only spraying 10 feet, give or take 20 inches on each side. And then these arrows are my height control. That's something else that's automatic. I can manually change it if something drastic is coming towards me in the field, but we have 5 sensors along this boom, and those sensors, I tell it a height and it will constantly keep that height over the crop. These booms are constantly keeping that 31 inches that I asked for. Brand new technology again, and now at 15 mile an hour, I don't even think about it. These booms just fall to the ground. Then there's this gadget, new program that we're using called Climate Field View on a map, and what it does is it takes information out of the sprayer and puts it on an iPad. It's all live time, so anyone on the farm can watch what I'm doing right now with this app, and this app takes all that information and puts it over Google Earth. So then we can overlap those pictures, and why that's really important to us is if we change product through a field, or if we change a rate at seeding or different seed or different spray, it will show it in color on that map. And if the yield changes at harvest, we can go back in the off season and look at why it changed and if it was good or bad on those rates or those products. And then in knowing that, we can apply that next year or not apply it if it was a bad result. This allows us to do our own trials and get real results for our farm and apply it in that next season.
So that's it for the day. Our tank is empty and we're going to be starting tomorrow, and we can come back to the same spot in the field. All the GPS and the computer has the memory of exactly where we stopped, and we can pick up right from where we left off.
When we're done the field, I have an auto fold because we can't drive down the road at 120 feet wide, and the wings will slowly fold in. Not slowly, it actually happens very fast. And then we'll be ready to drive away.
agronomy is really the science and application of science to crop production. So an agronomist's primary role is to help optimize yield and quality while maintaining, soil health and soil conservation and water quality. An agronomist's role is really working with farms and researchers, policymakers to help improve crop production over time.
Part of that then is looking at the environment and what impacts that is having of agricultural production and what impacts that's having on the environment. And then we start to focus on what do we do to mitigate those impacts. But one thing with the agriculture sector is you don't overlook or you don't sidestep those issues, because if you do, eventually, then you won't have agricultural sustainability at the end of the day.
Just like everything in life, the amount of information available has expanded. And even on the farm, we have a whole list of different consultants we can work with now. We'll have agronomists that have replaced what I used to call the district agriculturists. But we also have consultants that can help with grain marketing, can help with even machinery decisions. Do you buy or lease a machinery? Because the farms are getting larger and larger and they're such a comprehensive business, it's kind of hard to be an expert in everything. There's certain times of the year that the farmer has to focus on growing the grain and being productive.
So prior to the profession of agronomy really taking hold into modern agriculture, when you think back to even the 40s and 50s, that's kind of where it began, where we were, governments and policymakers were really investing heavily into crop research, crop production research, plant breeding, different techniques. For the 70s and 80s, we really relied heavily on, call it, governmental information dissemination. But there was a big change in the 70s and 80s, specifically, especially North America. We were really looking at conservation agriculture. We were really a European-based farming system in a dry land environment. From there into the 90s, that's really where we started to see the technological revolution come in. And we saw governments backing away. They were asked to step back, and especially early 2000s, they really stepped back in certain provinces, which left a gap. And that's where consultants kind of stepped into that role. One of the things we do to look at bloom staging is we're counting the amount of open pods and flowers to estimate the bloom staging. So we time our fungicide application. If we have to apply, we time it correctly. So late 90s, early 2000s, we really saw the surgence of agronomists simply because there was a need that wasn't being met.
So every year we soil sample by probing into the ground with a hydraulic probe, and we'd take out cores of about 12 inches and send them all to a lab. And from there we receive micronutrient data and a whole bunch of different data that we can use to build our prescription maps for the next season.
And these GPS maps are known as variable rate maps, and these allow you to, as you are seeding or going across the field, it allows you to put the amount of fertilizer down in the given area that it's needed, which means that we're limiting our inputs of fertilizer, which is helpful for us as farmers to not be over-fertilizing or overspending on fertilizing, and it's also helpful for the environment.
So there's different processes to take soil samples, one of which is zone sampling, where we will take multiple samples, up to hundreds of samples on each field, and make different zones for each layer. And there's other samples that we'll do to maintain that, where we just take 30 samples across the field and extrapolate it using the previous zone data.
So for example, a soil test will give you an indication as to what the pH is of the soil. So whether the soil is alkaline or basic, or whether it's acidic. And then soil testing has allowed us to know what the macronutrients, our nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium, is doing in the soil, along with our secondaries, which are calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. And then you get into the micronutrients, zinc, copper, manganese, iron, boron, molybdenum, cobalt, nickel, etc.
We can look at taking that whole farming system and making all these tweaks along the way that help improve our efficiencies. So we look at all those avenues and we look at ways to improve them by soil testing, creating nutrient management plans that optimize the areas where they are sandy, or where they are the clay, or where there's a mid slope or a hilltop. We can just do a lot better across a field than we could 10, 20 years ago.
The biggest thing, that changed since the 70s is just the amount of education, sophistication, information that's being applied to make decisions on the farm, I remember trying to raise crops of wheat that was just pathetic. And then years later, I realized that our land had a copper deficiency. With that copper deficiency, we could not grow wheat. We could sometimes grow oats, we could grow rye. Rye is insensitive to copper deficiency, but wheat would just suck. And we didn't soil test back then, and you flash forward 15 years and you realize that the decisions you were making back then were all the wrong decisions. Soil testing has evolved our ability to understand what's going on in the soil and how to balance that soil with other nutrients or other things that soil needs. And so when we're soil testing now, we're looking at that soil and trying to figure out, based on the target yield that we want to attain from the crop that we're growing, given the environmental conditions that we have with respect to growing degree days and heat units and anticipated rainfall, how much nitrogen, how many nutrients should we put in? It all starts with the soil test, and soil testing is very important. It's an arduous process, but it is very important for us to do the right thing with respect to putting on the nutrient combination in the right balance to allow the crops to attain their genetic potential yields. We soil sample not only whole fields, but we might soil sample based on topography. There's lots of biovegetation maps that can be used to synthesize zones for soil testing. And now there's technologies that will utilize things like spectroscopy to help us soil sample in more rapid time, so we get the information back faster. So soil sampling is really, really important, especially when we consider the environmental impact of fertilizer on the land. And make no mistake, fertilizer is expensive. No farmer wants to put on more fertilizer than is needed. But if you don't have your starting base, which is your soil test, then you're kind of guessing. So don't guess, soil test.
And over time, all those little tweaks, integrated pest management, soil conservation, enhanced nitrogen efficiency fertilizers, applying fertilizers closer to the time of crop uptake, residue management, keeping soil armor or at least residue on the surface to prevent evaporation, to keep soil biology healthy and alive. There's so many different tweaks that we've made through the decades that have got us to today.
We collect yield data, we collect biomass production, we collect images from satellites, that we source for further data layers. So we collect as many data layers as we potentially can and then see where correlations are to particular diseases or to growth of the products and development of the product. That, in the end, will allow us to increase decision-making capabilities from the farm so that we can make better decisions and become better stewards.
It's my role to understand the new technologies that are coming on stream, the new science that's been available. But for the most part, it really is about making those small incremental changes that add up to really great results. The founding principle or principles around agronomy really comes down to continuous education and continuous improvement. So we've never arrived. What farming allows us to do is peel away each year. So over time, we get to gradually and continuously improve. Now there's a long way to go because a discipline that never ends. We're always learning, there's always something to learn. Genetics are always improving. So our productivity is always increasing. So if you look at crop production over the last 100 years, it's an amazing story to see where yields have gone. It was incredible. So we continue to see those gains through plant breeding, great genetics, great agronomy. So we're really focused on minimizing inputs, but our outputs continue to be a great story to tell. But now we've kind of moved to the technological era.
Hello guys, my name is Yevgen Mikhailichenko. I'm from Ukraine, I'm 39, and I'm a professor at Dnipro State Agrarian Economics University in Ukraine, and here I'm a technology integration specialist by GIS, Geography Information System, and drones and autonomous farming here in Olds College, Alberta, and I'm based in Airdrie, Alberta. This is a, I call it Silver Omni Power platform, which is 2021 model. It has a pretty reliable Cummins engine, 187 horsepower. It has all existing parts in the market, so if you have something broken with both of your Omnis, you just go nearest New Holland or Case IH dealer to buy those spare parts. Back in November 2019, Olds College purchased the Silver Omni with 3 different implements. We have a spreader, we have a seeder, and we also have a sprayer which is hidden for winter time, but will be de-winterized soon. We cover all stuff, all agriculture operation here at the Olds College fields, except harvesting. So we're doing spreading, seeding, and spraying. So there are like 3 points to operate this autonomous farming robot. The first one of the most important, it's RTK base station, which is based on the roof of our art center here in Olds College. That's why we have the accuracy of GPS signal half of the inch. The second one is a mapping vehicle truck and antenna on it, and the laptop where I can build the missions and mission plan to send the Omni inside that previously created field boundary and just watch him from the corner. And the last one, it's on antenna and Viper 4 Plus Raven reliable again monitor. Hello people. We are doing the planned mission we are planning the mission for our Omni Power Black platform to spread 105 acres of the blend 80-40-25 with a 130 pounds per acre rate, application rate. Before we started the interview, I remapped the field boundary. This is the field we have. Once you get to the field, you have your field boundary. You're ready to create the mission plan. And you can change the direction of the lines like 0, 90 degrees from north to south, east to west. This is our mission plan, what it looks like. So this is a start point, and this is an end point. And hit play. And watch how it's moving. Okay, it started spreading. Right now, blue icon, it's us, and the red one, it's Omni, silver one going. So the green lines means this is working AB lines, where it's actually gonna be applied product. The red one, it's just like transportation from one AB line to another.
The integration of autonomous farming is something relatively new on our farm. We have been working with Olds College for the last 3 or 4 years with it, and we're playing with it prior to that. We've learned a lot of lessons. I believe it will come eventually, but it's probably not coming as fast as everybody thinks. It might displace some jobs while creating other jobs. One of the interesting things about autonomy is it might move you away from having one large machine, and maybe you'll have 3 smaller ones, which might change compaction, which change efficiency. We're certainly researching it and considering it as a future move for our farm.
I believe one of the benefits of autonomy is freeing up the human labor to do other work, and one operator can maintain and keep 3 different autonomous machines going at the same time. It can replace a lot of the mundane work like rock picking and land rolling, all these things that just are slow, take time and manpower. Instead, it can be utilized autonomously and just have one operator manage 3 or 4 different machines.
So it's definitely closer on the horizon than it was 5 or 10 years ago. And we're also learning a lot about, which specific use cases are going to benefit the most from autonomy on farm. So the more information we're gathering and the more trained individuals we have and the opportunities for training for farmers, the easier the pathway it will be for more broad acceptance and broad adoption of autonomous farming, because it does definitely have a critical role to play in improving overall productivity and efficiency of food production.
Rate of adoption really comes down to how quickly does this technology or idea meet the needs of the majority of the farmers. The rate of adoption depends on the standardization that the industry can come to, so you can swap out and do something called interoperability, where you're able to move data, move equipment, move electronics, move hydraulics between sets of equipment as rapidly as possible.
The rate of adoption of BMPs, beneficial management practices, frankly, has not changed, in my opinion, since the 70s to date.
Adoption within agriculture is a complicated area because there's so many different technologies that have different benefits and different pictures. So for each technology, we have to look at independently. Auto steer was a relatively straightforward technology, fairly easy to adopt, fairly easy to implement. You put the device on there, once it works, like you push a button and it goes and it corrects itself. Where with variable rate technology, well, you first have to create the mapping. Well, before you can do that, you have to understand on what basis you're actually going to go and create your prescription. So there's way more steps involved, there's way more activities, makes it more complicated. Because of the variability in soil, because of variability within different areas, it's so much more complicated and difficult to actually compare and say, well, the way I did it will work for you as well.
Probably the shining example of technology adoption for farmers was auto steer, because your shoulders weren't sore at the end of the day, it would steer your tractor for you. So it really added a lot of productivity and it saved on overlap. It was a really easy calculation to calculate seed and fertilizer cost. And if you could save 3 or 5% overlaps, that more than pays for the auto steer. So it was quickly adopted. And then further to that, variable rate technology came in, which allowed us to vary the rates of seed and fertilizer across landscapes. So now that we were looking at variability from the sky, looking down, we could then start looking at how we apply nutrients and seed more efficiently.
When I think about the benefits and risks to being an early adopter, it's a double-edged sword. Very often I've been on the bleeding edge, which is even ahead of the leading edge. There are farms today that are not adopting any new technology, and there are farms that are adopting new technology. And back in 2012, Terry Aberhart and a bunch of us at AgriTrend did some analysis of variable rate fertilizer technology and found out that the differential between that variable rate fertilizer and straight shot fertilizer across the field was resulting between $35 and $55 an acre profit. Today, those numbers would be much higher than that. If you're farming 10,000 acres and you can drop another $100 per acre to your bottom line because of implementing technology, then that means you're going to pull another $1 million a year to the bottom line of the farming operation based on that technology.
Once we started zero tilling that land, our farm went through a significant expansion phase during that time because we had the equipment and we had adopted that technology early on. But rather than disturbing 12 inches, you would maybe disturb 1 inch of that soil. The organic matter from the years before would rest on top of it and develop like a thatch of mulch, and that would slowly work its way down into the soil, and that mulch would hold moisture and would decompose and add to the topsoil rather than take away from it. So we saw a big change when after about 5 or 6 years of minimum till or zero till, we saw the return of earthworms and more bacteria. It became more of a sustainable life cycle, I would say. So we saw our yields increase dramatically. There's still a lot of the world that doesn't practice it yet, but I think that as people realize the conserving aspects of it, it's growing. And right now, I'd say in Western Canada, probably 80% of the people practice it.
Having the GPS navigation system in our equipment has reduced 7% of our inputs across the board. So this means 7% less fuel, 7% less chemical, 7% less fertilizer, 7% less water. It's very effective and saves us a lot of money and also helps the environment in a really good way.
So we've also incorporated weather stations throughout our farms that can provide immediate real data to our phones and show us our rain levels, different wind temperatures, and all of this data to just incorporate and have correct data logs.
One of the benefits, I would say, to being an early adopter is your likelihood of getting government external support is higher. It recognizes that these technologies can be very expensive. So it allows them and says, hey, we can provide some funding to support you, because we know if you adopt or take on this technology, our ability to manage climate change impacts will increase. Not just for you, the farmer, but even for society at large.
When we think about in the past, at the time there were some incredible resources. There was lots of effort put into developing extension services and resource centers and test farms, essentially, to help farmers understand how big changes in practices could be accomplished on their farm. And yet when we look at adoption rates, it took roughly 30 years to get from the inception of a new practice that was known to be long-term sustainable. It took 30 years to get from inception to about 80% adoption rate that we have now. And if we're looking at the future targets of feeding 9 billion people by 2050, or reducing our carbon footprint by X% by 2030, we can't wait 30 years to reach 80 to 90 to 100% adoption rates. So we have to do something differently and think about what is really needed to move the needle faster and get adoption rates to the level that we know are needed to meet some of these targets.
What it looks like is that the younger population, the younger demographic within agriculture is more keen to actually adopt different technologies than those who are closer to the point of exiting the industry.
Some people are more comfortable with adopting technology earlier than others who will wait and see. And all of that comes with different pluses and minuses. I don't think there's an easy answer to say what is the right way. There is a cost to be on the leading edge, but there's also a benefit.
In 2018, Olds College established the Olds College Smart Farm, mainly as a response to the global grand challenge of needing to feed a growing population with less negative environmental impact and provide a resource for industry and students and farmers to evaluate, validate, and test new ideas, new technologies, new practices, and learn about them. So Olds College was really the first post-secondary to establish such an entity like a smart farm to support that kind of training, demonstration, and validation of technologies, and really with the goal of helping technology developers develop the right tools for farmers and ultimately adoption. And that higher rates of adoption of the right tools and the right practices is really what is critical to help us meet these global grand challenges of feeding a growing population by 2050 and reducing our overall carbon footprint of food production by 2030 and 2050.
A lot of people say that agriculture is slow to adopt, but I think we have to be careful on how we measure that. Surveys are conducted where only X number of farmers are using GPS guidance. Well, which farmers did you survey? How big are those farms? So I think we have to be very careful here on whether we're measuring acres of adoption or whether we're measuring adoption by the head. And I think that if we started to measure the rate of technology adoption by the acre, the adoption numbers would be much higher than people realize.
Farmers are the most conservative innovators on the planet because they have to be. They have to be risk averse, yet they're the ultimate risk takers. And so how do they absorb information, and what kind of information do they need in order to make some of those bigger risk decisions to adopt a practice that they may not already be working on their farm?
The rate of adoption has changed dramatically because of technology. We all have smartphones, and so it doesn't take long before somebody can get an answer to a question by tapping into a variety of different networks, including AgVisor Pro, which I'm building, so you can download that. So the ability for people to find out information has increased exponentially. The number one factor to increase the rate of adoption of new technology on the farm, I think, comes down to one word, which is confidence. A farmer has to be confident that when she applies that technology on her operation, that it's going to work. And that is really the connection between those experts in the field and the farmers that are working the land to help minimize or mitigate the risk of adopting the new technology. The other piece is that we have to have more young people, which means that we're going to have to leverage farm technology integrators to connect people together faster to create more confidence.
What motivates us to be early adopters is self-preservation. We grow commodities. There's no way to differentiate yourself on price. So in order to produce more efficiently, you have to improve every year. Every year you have to do more with less in a different way. And the way to do that is through technology and harder work.
So a lot of the focus is a focus on technological advancements and digital tools that can support on-farm decision-making or practice adoptions to accelerate and improve overall productivity and sustainability.
My name is George Gake. I've been at Olds College for about 10 years now. During the summer months, I'm involved with the Research Center, the Olds College Center for Innovation, and my role there is to work with drones mostly as the drone team lead, as well as doing geographic information system analysis. Today we're getting ready to go and fly what we call Field 18. So today we're going to use this one to fly that field with a multispectral camera and a thermal camera. And from the data that we get back from that, we'll be able to look at the health of the crop that's there. We'll be able to look at moisture levels and also stress in the plants. We're ready to go. We're just going to pack this up and head out to the field. We've done a LiDAR flight on this field already. That's light detection and ranging sensor that we fly with that. So we use that to take measurements of the crop. We have quite a bit of data on this field already, and as part of our decision-making process, we overlay these layers on top of each other for that field. And that helps us to gain new insights into what's happening in the field and make decisions on things like how much seed to put in different parts of the field, or what type of spray and how much we need to put in the different zones of that field. So with the data that we're gathering today, what we're actually looking for is disease in the crop. So this is a trial field that we've used looking for disease in the crop there. And so this will help us to be able to distinguish, like I said, healthy crop versus diseased crop, as well as just stress that may be happening that we can't see yet with the naked eye, but we will be able to pick it up with these sensors. So I'm just setting up the tripod here. Going to put a GPS unit on top, what's called RTK, real-time kinematic. So it is going to act as a base station for the drone and continually send corrections so that we get GPS accuracy of down to 2 to 5 centimeters as we're flying. So this is our thermal camera, 2 lenses, thermal and regular colors. This is our 10-band multispectral camera, 2 cameras each with 5 different lenses, and these lenses are capturing very narrow frequencies of the spectrum. Provides us with different information, and how you combine them together afterwards allows you to see things like how healthy the crop is. So it's a very useful camera to have. So this is what's called a smart controller. To plan a mission, we just go in and say we're going to create a new route. Different options for the types of missions that you're going to fly. We do mostly mapping missions. So then I just go ahead and name it, tell it what camera I'm going to use, and then trace out the boundaries for the flight, and then it creates the flight plan automatically. The camera parameters are put into the controller already, so once I tell it the height that I want to fly and what camera I'm going to use, then it already starts creating the flight lines. So the green lines on here are where the drone is going to fly. And I just outline my field that I want. So there's my field boundaries. You can see down here it's showing me what's appearing in the thermal camera. Every time it takes a picture, it's actually taking 10. So there's going to be 30,000 different multispectral images created from this flight. Another 3,000 color images from the thermal camera, plus another 3,000 thermal images. I can see where it is at any time. I can also, by looking at the telemetry here, or telemetrics, I can see how high it's flying, the wind speed, how fast it's flying, what direction it's going. And then if I go to this screen, I'm seeing the color camera plus the thermal one there. So I get a lot of feedback from the drone on this controller as it flies. Most important thing is to keep track of where it is, so I usually have it on this screen, and it's just going to follow those green lines back and forth as it flies. That little screen tells me its progress and how much time is left in the mission. So we just keep track of it as it goes until it's finished. So after the drones have collected all of this imagery or all of this data, we need to do something with it. We have software to process it all, and then we use other software to do analysis on it. So what we're looking at right here is what's called a geographic information system software, and you can see it's just a regular color image, so it's quite detailed. You can see, spots where it's been missed. You can see the tracks of the Omni Power machine that we used for seeding and spraying. This is kind of the basic level RGB or color image. I'm going to turn that one off, and underneath that you'll see an elevation map of the field. And the elevations that we're actually looking at here are the top of the crop canopy. We then also have a digital elevation model. This is of the bare ground underneath the plant. One of the most useful types of data from drones is what we call NDVI. So that's a vegetation index. There are quite a number of different ones that you can produce. We've got a fairly healthy crop. We've got some issues in this area here. So this is the type of map that we would go ahead then and create a prescription. And then that creates the prescription map that is put into the GPS controlled machinery. The last type of imagery we have in this example here is a thermal map. So you can see some of the hotter areas and cooler areas. We do these thermal images at different times throughout the year, and so it really clearly indicates where we have lots of moisture and where we don't have much moisture in the field. It just gives you a completely different perspective of what's going on in the field than standing on the edge of your field and trying to look at it. So you're cutting down on your costs. You're also cutting down then on the impact on the environment. Then you're not going to have excess fertilizer on there that's going to end up running off from that field. So you've got some pretty substantial benefits for using this technology.
When you think about it, and this is something I discussed in the book I've written called Food 5.0, How We Feed the Future, we've come through what I think is 5 iterations of agriculture. The first one goes all the way back to the time we domesticated crops and livestock for our use. And really, this was the age of muscle. And whether it was human muscle or oxen or horse, we were trading that muscle to create food to feed a population that was in one place at one time. The next evolution was really around the internal combustion engine. And then we were converting fuel. We were converting hydrocarbons into food because we harnessed the power of the machine. And that's the second iteration of agriculture. And we're still there. The next iteration of agriculture is the era of chemistry. And chemistry could be quantified as both organic and synthetic chemistry. Now, it's those chemistries that lent themselves to increased production in agriculture because those chemistries got to be more and more and more exact over time. To today, when we use chemistry, we're really talking about grams per acre, so very low doses to do a very specific job. Then, in the mid-90s came the era of biotechnology. Biotechnology, that was really the mid-90s. And I remember in 1996 planting the first herbicide-tolerant canola crops in Western Canada. It was a very, very exciting time. And so we've been living in that biotechnology arena, that kind of technology era, since about the mid-90s. And biotechnology transformed much of agriculture, particularly in North America. And to the point that today, by using HT, herbicide-tolerant crops, the amount of tillage has dropped off precipitously, leading to a tremendous increase in soil quality. So it's the ability for us to decrease tillage that lends itself to soil quality. The fifth one being convergence. And we're in that right now. And the era of convergence is where technologies are all slamming together. So whether it's gene editing and bioengineering, you're also seeing that technology slam together with things like GPS guidance. You're also seeing the advent of remote sensing and you're seeing see and spray technology that only sees the weed, sprays that out, dropping your herbicide application by 80 or 90%. So we're in an era right now where data crunching is massively increasing, sensing of the crops, our ability to do variable rate, sectional shutoff, turn compensation, see and spray technology that I've mentioned, all of those things are coming down on the farm at breakneck speed, robotics, and all of them are being tied together. That's what we're dealing with in farming today, is we have to converge or bring these technologies together to take advantage of them to increase the ability to produce food in a more sustainable and more environmentally friendly manner.
After seeding and spraying is done and during the growth season, many farmers take advantage of this time to attend annual agricultural trade shows. Here they educate themselves on the newest breakthroughs in agriculture and look for new opportunities to make their operations more environmentally friendly and sustainable.
Welcome to AgSmart. I'm Stacy Falcar, the AgSmart event co-manager. And here at AgSmart, we have 2 days of nonstop education. We have over 110 interactive exhibits. It's everything from the regenerative agriculture side of things. We also have the OmniPower platform doing autonomous demonstrations. And we also focus on a lot of variety innovations. So we do that through crop plots and a variety of educational sessions.
My name is Marcus Weber with Landview Drones. We equip farmers with hardware and training to be able to use drones on their farm. So we sell them everything from scouting drones, tiny little ones with a zoom, to a mapping drone that'll fly a whole field, and ultimately to spraying drones. This one is an 8-liter drone. We have 40-liter drones for spraying large acreage. And we teach farmers how to use that and get them certified to fly safely within Canada's airspace. So drones have advantages over both manned aircraft and ground sprayers. In comparison to manned aircraft, they're of course a lot safer because there's no pilot there putting his life at risk flying under power lines or close to crop. So on average, most ground sprayers would trample about 3% of the crop, whereas these don't trample anything. So approximately 3% of most farm fields are sprayer tracks that you now win back by using an aerial tool to apply those products. Typically, a spraying drone is not used alone. It's done in a 2-pass system. So a small drone with a multispectral camera would be used to map the field. And this is using near-infrared light. It sees things the human eye can't see. They can now target areas of the field by mapping it first with one of these multispectral cameras, and then using that to both create the boundary for the spraying drone and a prescription that will apply just to those parts of the field. And the savings are substantial. So the technology is moving ahead very quickly, with the biggest advances being atomizers that now create specific droplet sizes, which again helps with the environmental benefits and can help to reduce drift in a windy situation. It's unbelievable how much farmers are using this to innovate. We have one customer, for example, that is seeding winter wheat into a standing corn crop. The corn crop is 8 or 10 feet tall. He can seed into that with a spraying drone, and then the winter wheat will grow at the base of the corn, and in the fall, once the corn is gone, his cattle have beautiful graze. And I hear stories like that all the time of farmers using drones to innovate on their farm.
Hey, my name is Mac Hunick. My company is called Threshold UAV. I founded this company about 3 months ago after observing some problems in the survey industry in general. Threshold UAV is a technology company based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, that is building drone control software that prioritizes easy-to-use features that enable any operator to pick up a tablet and quickly command a drone swarm to do your bidding. Right now we're in the development stage. We've just successfully fielded our first prototype system. This involves a mission planner app, some mounted controllers here, a whole bunch of off-the-shelf drones, and we were able to survey 120 acres in under 9 minutes. This is very, very fast. This is a lot faster than the other guys are doing it. And the way we're doing it with multiple drones alleviates many of the concerns of weather conditions and light conditions changing, rendering survey results potentially useless. The ability for our company to perform repeated surveys allows you to monitor change on your field and make better data-driven decisions about your crop.
So Threshold is aiming to increase the efficiency of flights to take what is an industry standard of approximately 2 hours to complete a 1-section or 640-acre survey, down to approximately 25 minutes from setup to teardown.
So the seeding drones work similar to a granular fertilizer spreader, where the seed is basically thrown over top of the crop. So a lot of this happens at higher altitudes, not as close to the ground as with spraying. Under the SCAP, the Sustainable Canada Agricultural Partnership, there's a farm technology program here in Alberta that helps to subsidize drones that can help with environmental benefits and climate change. And some of the innovation that's driving is farmers are able to buy a multispectral drone or a spraying drone with some significant reimbursement from government. So spraying by drone, unfortunately, at this point is not legal in Canada. It is down in the US. Here in Canada, Health Canada has decided that they need more evidence that this is safe. I expect we will see spraying drones on most farms in Canada. On the largest of farms, they'll likely be used for small niche uses, but for farms up to 5,000 acres, we will within years see drones taking over as their primary spraying tool.
There's a lot of value in producers coming to engage at AgSmart because it brings everything together into one location where they can learn about a multitude of topics that they're facing and addressing the challenges on their farms today to have a better tomorrow.
Now that we have seen the seeding and the spraying and the growth season pass, we are into the harvest. Depending on the year, Canadian farmers will harvest 20 to 40 million tons of wheat, 14 to 22 million tons of canola, 14 to 16 million tons of corn, 6 to 10 million tons of barley, as well as 10 to 15 million tons of various other crops like soybeans, oats, flax, and peas. There is approximately 16 million square kilometers of farmland on the planet. And Canada ranks 7th in the world at just under 500,000 square kilometers. With the global population just over 8 billion people, the 39 million people in Canada make up 0.5% of the global population. Of those 39 million Canadians, only 1.34% work in agriculture. About 575,000 people. Which means that Canadian farmers make up 0.0072% of the global population, which has got to make these guys an endangered species. And they are responsible for approximately 80% of global canola production, 12% of global wheat production, 13% of oats production, 10% of barley production, 8% of soybean production, and 2% of the globe's corn. Not too bad, eh? Check out these guys in their natural habitat.
Hey there, I'm Wade McAllister. It's October 10th today, and we're on our last field of canola. This machine is 2 years old. So here we have our monitor, and it's telling us everything the combine's doing. It's got all of our settings. So here we have our yield data. So we got our bushels per acre, and then on the top right we have our moisture for the field, what the grain moisture is coming off at. So today we're dry, and yeah, we're good to go.
The machine itself has automatic steering capability. The newest models of these ones actually will self-adjust depending on the weather as things go. So they're getting more and more advanced all the time. This particular model, we have to still check a couple times a day to make sure that it's doing the best job as the crop conditions change. If we look at the monitor over here, it shows us the moisture setting of the grain so that we know that it's safe to store, and it shows us the yield as well. Next page deals with kind of the auto steer portion of it. It shows you a map of the field that you have done and how much more you have Once you get on the handle of these machines, they operate quite efficiently and they're relatively easy to operate. Training someone to operate a machine like this, even though they're very expensive, they can be fairly simple to operate.
Pretty cool these days because this machine will actually set itself. So there's an automation button here, so once you kind of get your rough settings in, it will automatically adjust for the different conditions across the whole field. So whether you got a drowned out spot, a lighter area, heavy crop, the machine is always changing throughout the whole field. So it just takes the error, human error away, and it just keeps that combine running at its full maximum efficiency throughout the whole quarter. We've got all of the settings for the combine. So you got your rotor RPM, you got your concave clearance, so that's the area around the rotor that threshes the grain out of the straw. And then we got our fan speed, which blows the straw up and lets the seeds fall down. And then our sieve settings, so those are the shakers inside. The grain will fall through the sieves, they're called, and then it's going to go into the tank behind us. And then all the straw gets chopped and through a chopper and gets spread back on the soil for next year. And then we use these pickup headers, they're called, to pick up the swaths. But when we're straight cutting our cereals or our peas or anything like that, that's not canola, we'll use GPS, and that's just a more efficient way just to keep the combine full and just takes the mental side, I guess, of the operator out, just so you can run longer days and you're able, like I said, you're able to keep that combine full and at its max capacity all day long.
This is us unloading canola. Dallas, who's operating that unit, has been with us for quite a few years, and he's keeping up to 4 combines, trying to make sure that we unload on the go so that the machine is constantly working. And he'll now run off, grab another combine, and then load it into trucks to go to the market. So the operator going through heavier or lighter crop, if we set the machine for him or her, then they can, kind of have the information to adjust their speed accordingly. When I turned the steering wheel, that was the sound of the auto steer turning off. Okay, and now we come to the end. This preset button lifts up the header. Okay, now that sound was just the sound of us getting to the auto steer. Now if I push my preset button, you'll hear that sound. That's the sound of the auto steer connecting right into gear. The key with all these machines is to, of course, keep them as efficient as you possibly can. And as long as the wheels are turning and they're operating, you're doing work with them.
And throughout the day, as we go into the day, the crop's going to get a lot drier, so it's always going to be adjusting to make sure that it's doing the best job possible. So all we have to do as an operator is just make sure that we're feeding this swath down the center of the machine, and then just controlling our speed. So this is the joystick here. So this controls our speed of the machine. So it's called a slap shift. So it always goes back to center. So every time we push this forward, it speeds the machine up about 0.1 miles an hour. So just to keep that engine load and the machine at max capacity, we're constantly watching the swath coming in, and I'm able to tell when it's a thicker or thinner swath. So we speed up or slow down depending. And then here we have our auger in and out for when we want to unload, and then there's our unload button. This is our last field, and looking forward to wrapping up. It's been a long go. We've been harvesting now since August 18th. Started on the fall rye, and today we're October 10th, and always try to get done around that Thanksgiving weekend, so we're right on schedule. It's a beautiful day, 20 plus degrees outside, nice little breeze. Couldn't ask for a better day to finish up.
This section here, I described earlier, deals with your loss. You set these bars to what you deem to be acceptable. The center bars, we want to be kind of in the green area. That's kind of the target area. So now, for instance, if I go faster, see now it's throwing out the back quite a bit. And that center is unacceptable. So now we'll back off to where we have our preset levels, and we'll see that start to come down. The automatic feature on this particular one does it compared to engine workload. Some of the newer ones will do it according to cameras that will identify the seeds going through and see if there's any particular losses. So the newer version of this one, just a few years newer, would have an algorithm that will control the combine, adjust the settings to minimize loss and keep as much grain as we possibly can.
We always like to do our own on-farm trials. So I did a seeding rate trial here this spring, seeding at different rates of canola seed for plants per square foot to kind of see the yield difference. Unfortunately, we can't do any of that data today because this field got quite a bit of hail end of June, so it'll skew the data too much, so it's not going to be that accurate. But usually I would have another data collecting device up here that's going to show our yield map, and I can actually pull those paths where I seeded at a different rate, and then we can compare the yield to the different seeding rate. There's nothing better than doing your own on-farm data, because I mean, everybody's farm is different. Everybody's land is different, the way they treat their land, the way they do their fertility, their seeding, everything. So you can't really usually go off somebody else's farm data because maybe they don't treat everything the same as you do. So I always like to do our own farm data. So like I said, it's unfortunate that the hail kind of screwed that up for us this year, but yeah, we'll try it again next year, and we'll see if we can get that figured out.
So all this technology and you know, the interpretation and use of the data, you know, fundamentally goes back to our core principles, which are stewarding the land, using resources efficiently, you know, to produce as much as possible. We don't want to use excess fertilizer. We try to minimize our chemical use. We want to, you know, have a sustainable model where a farmer can, you know, be profitable, but also food can be inexpensive for those that need it in the world. And all of this technology helps us get there.
Well, here we are, the last 100 feet of harvest 2023. It's been a long run, but it's been a great season, and yeah, excited to be done. Here we are, last little bit, done. So yeah, that's it.
Agriculture is an exciting industry right now, and there's lots of dynamic uses of technology. The greatest solution right now is watching the different solutions to different problems kind of integrate together into one solution.
I do believe that this type of technology is helping to improve agriculture to make it more environmentally sustainable. We have a growing population in the world. We're needing to grow more food for all of us.
This new technology, like the current place where we are at with implementing these new technology, precision ag and the data management, and then that I think will be our next step in order to be part of that solution, in order to maintain or increase productivity while at the same time seeing a reduced land base.
Our task here in Olds College to show our students that how to operate and manage autonomous farming. This is our main goal. And the second goal, to provide technical reports to a Raven industry and to cooperate with this company to improve these technologies and these robots. Because everything based on the specialist. You can build these machines, but if you don't have great workers who understand this technology, it's just useless. The most common issue with this technology is how to deliver the platform from shop to the field safely.
So I believe autonomous equipment will be arriving to the majority of progressive farms within the next 5 years. There's a lot of autonomous equipment out there already that's being used and utilized even on our farm. We have greatly progressed and learned a lot about autonomy and where its weaknesses are and where it can really overcome and be utilized to its fullest potential.
And they may transform from being tractor drivers to being fleet operators of autonomous robots running in the field. But I don't see the day when agriculture will absolutely be 100% no humans involved. I just can't see it because there's too many variables that still hit us when we're farming the land.
So the benefits of swarm technology as we move forward and learn how to make it work, right? Because we're still in the early development stages of all that, is that we become more efficient and effective.
The day could come where that heavy equipment is mostly replaced by stuff being done from the air using drones rather than actually having to drive over your field. Obviously, there's some things that you may still need to do with heavy equipment. A lot of the more regular tasks could conceivably be achieved using drones in the future. I might get shot for that.
The other part is like devices by themselves, they can work 24/7 as long as they have power and as long as they program right? So we can now do more within the same amount of hours than what we otherwise would have been able to do.
You could have a scenario where a farmer has a fleet of drones. They have drones that are being used to monitor the crops. They have drones that can be used for seeding. They have drones that can be used for spraying the crops.
I believe that the majority of the work in the fields will be done fully autonomously, and instead we'll just have one operator that will manage 3 different pieces of equipment.
Agriculture is going to be play a pivotal role in the future because the increasing demand is going to make us become more creative, is going to ask more solutions from us, and it will provide us the opportunity to do things differently in an innovative way that we never thought about before, that will make a difference, right? And I really think that we're on the precipice of that.
Makes me feel that we're on the right path with respect to untangling some of these complexities and helping farmers in the industry better understand how to be more efficient and more productive. Because of the advancement of digital tools, as well as the advancement of the smart farm concept and the fact that multiple smart farm-like entities are now popping up all over Canada, we are working together, we're collaborating to ensure that everybody will have access to a place to validate and test and demonstrate these practices and technologies in the region that is most specific to them. So I think we're in a really, really good place to address a lot of these challenges and help the ag industry embrace the technological revolution.
As we continue to develop these different technologies and to learn what kind of insights we can get from all of the data that's collected with these sensors, that will help us to improve agriculture, be more productive, more efficient, and more environmentally sustainable.
What excites me most about the agriculture and the agricultural sector today is the fact that we are identifying those beneficial management practices for farmers that they can be successful with. It's not happening at a very rapid pace, but we are putting the pieces in place to ensure that when any dollar is invested in the agricultural sector, it will have an effective outcome for, again, not just the farmer, but even society at large. There's a lot of talk now about circular economy, which means there is no gap in production. I talked earlier about the zero waste policy. There is no waste, and we utilize every single piece of input and make sure that there is a successful, productive outcome.
I talk to farmers globally all the time. It could be in India, it could be in Mongolia, it could be in Argentina, on any given day, Ukraine, on any given day. And we're sharing ideas and we're sharing technology. It could be cucumbers, it could be melons or papayas, it could be rice, it could be anything, anywhere. Our access to information and our desire to leave this place better off than when we found it is really what excites me. And I think the whole agronomy community, or agronomist community, feels the same way. I'm not alone in that. We're all looking to do better and leave this place way better than we found it.
How big is this opportunity of GPS and ag tech? And what will it do for farmers in the future? Goldman Sachs predicts that the market for agriculture technology, including GPS and see and spray technology and sectional shutoff and variable rate technology, is $265 billion. Let me repeat that, $265 billion. In other words, that ag technology will steal $62 billion worth of crop protection products or chemicals. Well, how will it do that? By putting on the chemistry more exactly, farmers will reduce their utilization by $62 billion worth of chemistry, $60 billion worth of fertilizer, $2.7 billion worth of diesel fuel, $12 billion of seed reduced because we're not double and triple seeding areas of the field. $77 billion worth of labor reduced because we're making more exact use of the time we're in the field, and robotics will come on based on GPS technology, enabling us to do things more efficiently. So the impact of GPS technology, again, combined with other technologies, is going to continue to revolutionize the way we do things on the farm.
So my opinion around how confident am I that agriculture can actually react to the demands that are in front of us. I think agriculture has proven over the decades and centuries that people that are involved in agriculture are creative and will find solutions. And I truly believe that those who are currently in agriculture are committed, dedicated, and are really, really good stewards of the land and of the future, and have the best in mind for mankind. So it will happen.
And I'm very optimistic about agriculture's ability, again, to learn, unlearn, and relearn, and to harness this power going forward. I think we're in for an amazing decade. We won't recognize a lot of stuff that's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. Certainly, the next decade is going to be very difficult to predict what that's going to look like on the farm. But to close, we're still going to need agricultural thinkers, and we're still going to need dedicated men and women who love the land and love their livestock, because at the end of the day, we still have to rely on photosynthesis, and we still have to turn sunlight energy into proteins, sugars, and starches to feed you and me for the foreseeable future. And I'm excited about that future.
Transitioning a family farm Even though it's a business, it has certainly an emotional component to it. You've lived your life on that land, you've put yourself and your efforts into that land, and you would of course want to see it go on and be maintained. You want to see somebody, you know, pick up the baton and keep going. But it's also a life that can be hard. There's a lot of hard work to farming, and there's some years where you work hard but you don't get rewarded because it doesn't rain. So you need to have people engaged that are passionate about what they're doing. And as much as I'm proud to have a couple of my sons farming with me now, I want them to be passionate about what they're doing. And if there's something else that comes up and they want to do that, that's great too. Just be passionate and happy. I do have one thing I say to my kids: whatever you do, I want you to be one of the best of it.
It's exciting to see a lot of things happening. It's exciting to see new technologies coming. I in particular like the work or field of work I'm in terms of research, because you're always exploring new things. You're always trying to answer new questions, and you're always trying to give back. Again, yes, the agricultural sector primarily, but we know that, or directly, but we know there's a trickle-down effect. It does mean that when I go to the grocery store, at the end of the day, that when I'm purchasing that food product or whatever it is, that I'm actually supporting a sustainable practice.
So now today, with technology, we are collecting more data in a day than I did in 3 years of field research. And that just means that now we have more information and more data with which to make more informed decisions around policy or practice change and the impact on overall carbon footprint and efficiency. So that acceleration in just the past 20 years, if we can match that 20 years going forward, imagine what we'll be able to accomplish.
As an industry and as a community and as a people, we will react to that, and we will move forward and respond to the challenges that are in front of us, like whether it's greenhouse gas emissions, it doesn't matter whether it's food shortage. As a human being, and I believe in that wholeheartedly, that as a human being we are responsive and we are a social being, and we will do whatever is best for us as mankind in order to stay alive and be here in this world, on this earth, centuries to come.